Would like to share screen.
So now the meeting is now live on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Deep, perhaps you can help me here. I'm just looking, I've gone to the share and I'm not seeing the PowerPoint document I've got open, the presentation slides.
Okay. So possibly you might have already put it in presentation mode. So please, just scroll down to the bottom and check. So whatever the applications that you that are open will automatically show up on your right once you click on the share content button. Yeah.
It's open, but it's not in full screen presentation. If I put it in full screen presentation, will that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should work. It should work. Yeah.
Yes.
You can try. You have another couple of minutes. Just share it and let us see it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's just coming up with the PowerPoint, so that's fine.
Yeah, we can see it.
Good,
so
good. Every system is different. I've just spent 2 weeks on Zoom. You get very used to it. Or Teams. I very rarely use WebEx, I have to say.
No, WebEx has its own advantage, especially when you are recording or when you are doing some kind of video recording, auditing, and all. So WebEx is more robust.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and it is one of the oldest platforms. Cisco WebEx was the initial platform which was widely used across the globe.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Only then other platforms like Zoom and other things have come up. And we have a lot more options, like we can conduct polls with the audience and we can take opinions, and then you can collect a lot of information. Yeah.
Yes. So Abdul, how's business generally in India? I mean, everything you hear is just, serious growth and India just becoming a bigger and bigger world player. A complete contrast to Western Europe, which is in relative decline and has been for some time.
That is true.
Very
Actually.
interesting to see the balance. Yeah.
Yes, there is a tremendous growth. The main change is people are becoming more competitive. Okay.
Yes.
So earlier, only few less percentage of people are becoming very competitive, working hard and trying to make difference. But now that percentage of the people who are working hard and trying to do their best is increasing tremendously. So now,
really?
at least,
Yes.
and the most important point is even the ladies, the women. Okay,
Yes.
so they are working very hard. Okay, so that is something making big difference. Sure. And there is another growth factor also, the rural areas. The rural areas, people are doing really good by educating their people and then sending them for doing some kind of innovative work, business. So that's how the growth is holistic. we can say.
Yes.
Okay, instead of in one industry or something, it's across all the industries. So that is the reason, people are doing their best. So there is if you have a serious growth, there is a challenge also, the high inflation. Okay, so you have that high inflation factor. Government is more competitive. Okay, so they also encourage, but still not so supportive for the companies as such. But people are finding their way how to succeed.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
I find it very interesting working in different parts of the world and the different business cultures and the different sense of growth or stability or in, the challenges there. Is really fascinating. That's why I like the travel side. Is you actually can absorb it. You just by sitting in the street cafe and having a coffee, you kind of absorb the sense of energy or lack of energy that's around and the problems.
That's so true. That's good. That's good. Okay. So let me post one more.
Maybe the banking solely.
Good day to all. Just we'll wait for in a minute or so. Many people are joining, so I'm just allowing them to join. I think good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the event today. I would like to invite you all, welcome you all for the Balanced Scorecard webinar to discuss critical success factors. Okay, so just a quick brief introduction. Fru Strategy, on behalf of Fru Strategy, I welcome all participants, the speakers. Okay, so to the event, we are proud sponsor of the event. We'll be very happy to contribute to the Balanced Scorecard implementations for you and your colleagues, and then we'll be very happy to support you to be successful. I would like to invite Alan Fell as a speaker for the webinar. Today, basically, what we do is we all know Balanced Scorecard framework is one of the most popular and proven framework for the strategy execution. Okay, there is no doubt about it for everybody. Apart from that, it's a most comprehensive and easy to understand, at least by this time, to really translate your strategies and then make the actionable things to achieve your strategy success. That's how it is. It has been there for quite some time. Very interesting. There are many success stories and there are some failures. Okay. Now today, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss based on the experience of so many implementations. So, what are the critical success factors makes the Balanced Scorecard success or failure? Okay. So, I would like to invite Alan Fell, very seasoned professional in Balanced Scorecard. He's one of the very few who are there practicing Balanced Scorecard since inception. So, Alan Fell, I know him personally way back in 2008 to 2009-10 while doing successful Balanced Scorecard implementations. So he has done maybe hundreds, maybe if it is not thousands, hundreds of implementations and made them success. Okay, so Alan, welcome to the webinar. Please, you can brief yourself. I know many of most of the attendees know you already very well. Okay, so Alan, please start your part of the webinar. We would like to really hear the success stories and how you want to advise the audience, and then we will see how they take up the questions. So before you start, if any of the participants would like to ask any questions, you have two options. One is you can just post a message in the chat box, then we can raise up the question, and then in the middle of the event I can just take up and coordinate with Alan to explain. Secondly, if you want to speak, just raise your hand. Okay, I would like our sorry. Okay, our organizers will unmute you. You can speak and then brief your use case. Then that can be discussed. Okay, so thank you very much and welcome all of you. Alan, please take up your session. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Abdul, thank you. And hello, everyone. From me, it's good morning because I'm at home just outside London, UK. So it's just 9:30 in the morning with me. And wherever you are, I hope you're having a good day. I hope your weather is better than here, which is always the case with the UK in winter time. Right. Abdul, thank you very much for the introduction and the general background. And absolutely, the Balanced Scorecard, it has been around. It is widely regarded as the #1 management tool to support strategy management. But, and there's a but, the problem is, although it's hugely adapted around the world and has been the last 30 odd years, growing usage, there are a lot of scorecard projects which, in inverted commas, fail. And fail is an emotive word, but what it really means is organizations that don't achieve the value from the system that they should. And the question is why? The question is, how can people improve the scorecard? Because the scorecard is a tool, very well known now. The principles are very well known. I'll refresh for 1 minute in a moment or two when we look at some slides. But concept is very well known. It is widely proven. And yet, so many don't really achieve the value that they should. So there's a potential that's missed. And the scorecard is purely the tool. It's an enabler. The result we want is a better performing business. We want a organization to have a clearer, more documented, more explicit strategic plan and operational plan down the organization. And we want strategy execution success. And if we had on the line Bob Kaplan, Professor Robert Kaplan, the famous Harvard professor and the co-creator of the scorecard, I've heard him many times describe it primarily as a strategy execution tool. Now, in the Balanced Scorecard Institute, which I'm a member of, we see it both as a planning tool and an execution, because I think it helps enormously in defining what your strategy is in a more explicit, measurable format, which then facilitates monitoring and execution. So that's the thinking. People know about it. We still I do very regular training programs on how to develop, and we use our famous 9-step methodology and so on. I've been doing that just this last week with a client in the Caribbean. But how do we make sure that we get value? And, anyone in business, and it doesn't matter whether you're public sector or private sector, we want value. We were investing time and perhaps money, depending on how we do it, in a scorecard. We want to get the value. That's the challenge. So what I'm going to do now is to share on screen a few slides and take you through these. And Abdul, I think we've arranged that those I know a lot of people always register for these things, but those who actually attend will be sent a copy.
Yeah, the old story right now is you give me the metric on that, no worries at all. What happens now if it's an AI generated metric?
Right, here we go. So what I hope you can see, please just let me know. You should be able to see a slide, Balanced Scorecards, the key critical success factors. Can someone just confirm it's on screen?
Yes, it is visible. It is visible.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Okay, so I'll just take you through this. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to raise them, as Abdul has said, either in the chat box or better still, actually raise it verbally. It's usually easier than chat box. Okay, so let me start by introducing myself if I can. And so my name, Alan Fell. I'm a former commercial banker. I'm a Brit. I live just outside London. And for the last 26, 27 years now, I've been an independent consultant, and I work in collaboration with various organizations. And my focus all the time has been on Balanced Scorecard and the wider subject of strategy execution. And although I'm based in the UK, most of my work is international, the majority of it in the Middle East. I have visited Dubai, been through Dubai immigration literally 500 times. And I'm going again in a couple of weeks, very regular destination. And then the rest of the Middle East in particular, of course, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but also Southeast Asia, worked in most of the countries there, especially Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and the rest of the world. Been to North America a few times, Europe, Africa, and Australia. It was nice to go down under for a week or two and work with Australian friends. So a lot of experience, and I started my Balanced Scorecard experience way back in 1994, the beginning of 94, so literally 30 years ago. And my boss at the time had just come back from Harvard and fired up with the idea of this new scorecard, and Robert Kaplan was one of his professors on the program he'd taken at Harvard. And he gave me the original Harvard article and basically said, and this was his remit, I want you to make this new idea of the scorecard the only way we plan, the only way we will monitor performance, and the only way we will reward people. In future, people will earn bonus, and in a bank, a bonus culture is always important, as many of you know. You will earn bonus by successfully executing the strategy. And that was it. And no guidance from anywhere else, no consultants, 1994, no real internet. Certainly not for me. I'm not a tech savvy person, really. No consultants to help us in this, no textbooks, nothing, just the original article. And we had to work it out from scratch. And the message I just want to give you is that that very early example did two things. It convinced me personally that the scorecard, if it's designed and used properly, can transform the performance of a business. And in leading the Balanced Scorecard project, and with great support from my boss, who was the overall general manager of our big division, many thousands of people, we transformed performance in 3 years by using this concept. So I've seen how it works. I've had to think it through from basic principle, not picking up textbooks and training programs and consultants, actually engaging this and engaging with a couple of people who were supporting me, did a great job. They did the bulk of the work on it. And we came out with a concept which I have to say is still the most robust application I have seen anywhere. We drove the performance through it. Nothing else was on the table at the performance management discussions. We rewarded people purely by measured results through the Balanced Scorecard, and we transformed performance. And it was a very rigorous culture, and it was my boss who set the culture, as all leaders do. And I enjoyed that culture. And it really gave me a passion, which I've still got 30 years later, despite advancing years, to make this system work properly. And my frustration is when I see applications that are simply not working and not delivering value. So that's my thinking behind all this. Since 2010, I've been a senior associate and consultant with the Balanced Scorecard Institute. And much of the work I do today is working in collaboration with them. But I do also independent work on non-competitive type activity. That's just me, quick introduction. Now, very briefly, a few thoughts. So the scorecard itself introduced in 1992, a famous Harvard article by Robert Kaplan and David Norton. And I just want to pay tribute to David Norton, who sadly passed away a couple of months ago. I had the pleasure of meeting him one-to-one a few times and having dinner with him, and the pleasure of listening to his masterclasses. He was a great leader in the field of corporate performance management. And, you know, one of these people that we say the world is worse off with his passing. So a tribute to Dave Norton. Bob Kaplan happily is still with us. I mean, all the years are advancing for us all, but what a thought leader he's been on this whole subject. Since then, of course, it's continually evolved. People, practitioners like me and hundreds like me around the world have taken the concept and developed it and applied it in particular directions, and it's become the #1 management tool for planning and execution. It's been very widely adapted and customized by people, and that is good, provided they don't throw away some of the basic principles and the basic strengths of the fundamental concept. Most of you will be familiar, and I'm using a very old slide, but I just wanted to emphasize something. The simple cascade of thinking: what is my strategy? How do I measure it? What is my future performance target? And what are the initiatives or projects I need to deliver that target in future? Very simple sequence of thinking, but so many organizations still get this wrong. My friends in the Caribbean, I was with this last week, what they had done until we started our program, they had thought about strategy and then projects, and all of their KPIs were focused on project performance or activity. There was nothing about strategic business outcome. So refocusing them was an important issue to do. Again, I'm sure some of you will have seen this slide or versions of this slide from the Institute, and it's really just a summary of the concept. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as a reporting output format. It's too much information, perhaps. But the idea at the top of the page, the vision, the mission, the strategic priorities and results or goals. Basically, what we're doing there is defining the destination. This is where we want to take the organization over the next 3, 5, 10 years, or by the year 2030, or some people starting to think about Vision 2040, aren't they, at the moment? And then the bottom 2/3, again, the strategy, documented as a set of objectives and cause and effect structure, which we call the strategy map. And then again, the cascade of thinking: strategy, measure, target, and then initiative. Those are the basic principles, and supported at the very bottom line by the values. So that's just an example, again, of the concepts and the key components of the strategy management system using Balanced Scorecard principles. So just a couple of points to emphasize. The scorecard is not the end in itself. It is a tool. It is a means to an end. And it's very important that people see that. And one of the factors in context is, why are we doing it? We need to be very clear on what is the real business reason. And I have found over time that the best Balanced Scorecard programs, the ones that generate the most value, is when there is a very clear underlying business reason. And then it works well. The things that don't work well, you have someone's appointed as a strategy manager and he's told by the chief executive, I want to use the Balanced Scorecard system. Please design one. Please implement a Balanced Scorecard. No indication why, the business reason, just get on with it. Or even worse, in the public sector, an edict comes down from the Ministry of XYZ that you need to have a Balanced Scorecard in future. That generally does not produce a good result. What produces a good result is when there is a clear business reason. In the example I shared with you in my bank, the underlying reason was we had to transform and fundamentally reposition a division of 3,000 people, which had been going, frankly, in the wrong direction. So it was a fundamental transformation program supported by the Balanced Scorecard, as well as some other softer management aspects. If I just share an example, this is from Sri Lanka. It's a country I visit a lot for personal reasons, and I've worked with many businesses there. In fact, I'm going again in a few weeks and looking forward to it. But I worked with a company there where the chief executive, the brief at the beginning of the program was very simple. He'd just taken over as chief. He understood the scorecard very well as a concept. And he said, what I want to do is, this business has stagnated. If you looked at our profitability and market share for the last 5 or 6 years, it's flat on the graph. And I want to take a second leap forward. I want to transform the business, make it a much bigger business, more profitable, a bigger market share. We will not do that by just carrying on doing what we're doing today. We have to refocus, and the tool we will use to refocus will be the Balanced Scorecard. And he proved to be, and I've worked with that particular organization many times over in short visits over a couple of years, he proved to be an almost textbook executive sponsor for a Balanced Scorecard program. Difficult to think of anyone who did it better. So it works best when you are really clear why you're doing it, not just the textbook reasons because you're guessing because the ministry have said they require you to do this in future. And it works best when you are supporting change, not just in a business as usual organization. So that's about the business context. So what I'm going to do is take you through quickly through 15 of the more important critical success factors. And I would like to emphasize they're not the only factors. There will be others. And if you take any particular case and examine how well it's working and other things that could be improved to deliver more value, there will be some unique features and some not on this list. But these are the common ones. And I've listed them there, and I've grouped it into issues about design, issues about the actual content itself, and issues about usage. And usage is the most important. Ineffective usage, it's a waste of time. You've got a tool, you're not using it. So let me start with design. And one of the features of design is we're very clear on the overall goals of the business. Not the route to get there, but where do we want to get to? And we use words like vision and strategic results or strategic goals or strategic destination. But we are defining the destination. For those of you from, or if there is anyone from Kingdom Saudi Arabia, that's sort of enshrined in Vision 2030. There's a lot of work to get there, but there's a clear understanding of what we want to achieve by 2030. The destination. The problem very often, either it is unclear, especially in the public sector, I have to say, or it's not measurable. It's just a concept which can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. You have disagreements sometimes with the top team. No understanding of the difference between the destination and the route. I often use the analogy of a taxi. When you get in a taxi, you tell the driver where you want to get to, the destination. You don't tell him which gear to be in or which lane to drive in, or that's his business. And if this is badly done, you get many different interpretations of what the vision means. And therefore, you have an organization which is not aligned right at the beginning of the journey. So good practice. Clear, smart, measurable goals that explain the vision in more tangible terms. I was with a food business in the Middle East recently. Very clear, the chief executive was very clear. In 4 years' time, we want to double our sales to $320 million, and we want to significantly improve our profit margin to achieve $32 million. In other words, 10% profit margin. Very clear, everyone knew it. The plan was focused on what do we do to double our sales and significantly improve the profitability. People can focus on that, and then you get results. And you don't want too many goals. You can sometimes just have one. In case I've given you, there are two. The sort of sales and profit, very common for a commercial business. In the public sector, it can be more difficult. But the clearer you can make these goals, and don't have too many, the better it is. And so they can be clearly communicated to all who need to know. Can I just say, as I go through these individual ones, if anyone has a question, please, I would suggest actually raise it as we go, because otherwise we'll be on the next page and you may lose track. So please, if anyone's got a question, unmute your microphone.
Yeah, very happy to unmute. Please feel free, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so please, I'll leave you just to take the initiative on that, and any way through this. Very common statement on this subject: if you don't know where you want to get to, any road will take you there. And that, unfortunately, is where a lot of businesses are. And that is not clever management. So if I'm working with a business, one of the things I'm focused on quite intently at the beginning is to make sure we have clear goals. Otherwise, how can we develop a strategic plan to achieve and reach those goals? Very simple logic. The second point in design is this issue about objectives and indeed the strategy map itself. And some of the problems you find, inappropriate strategic objectives could be existing operations, could be more just the nature of a project. Either too many or too few, and it's unclear what it's all really about. There's no clear story of the strategy, and generic, it could be anyone's. And you know, there's a horrible tendency in some organizations to say, oh, Mr. Allen, thank you very much. You train us on the scorecard. Please, will you give us some strategy maps for 2 or 3 companies in our industry? And the clear thinking is we're going to copy them. We'll copy them. We'll maybe just adjust it little. That's it. Job done. We can go home. Absolutely not. Your strategy should be unique, and your strategy map should reflect your unique strategy. And the final point at the bottom, confusion on perspectives. If you want to modify the 4 perspectives and you have a good logical reason to do so, and you do not disturb the basic principles of the scorecard, I would say fine. I have to say some people really more rigidly want to stick to the 4. But for example, if you want to split the customer side between direct customers and wider stakeholders, or between customers and the community. I've seen a big supermarket did that recently. In my book, that's okay. You're not diluting the strength of the scorecard in doing that. But don't leave things out.
Yeah. So, Alan, we have a question here. The 5th perspective, it can be used for the ESG. Okay. So, environmental, social, and governance. What do you think to integrate ESG perspective? You prefer to put like a 5th perspective, or you want to embed ESG initiatives and objectives into the existing 4 perspectives?
That's an interesting question, and I think it depends on how serious ESG is being taken. If it is genuinely seen as a major long-term issue for the organization, and they take real pain to focus on it, then you could have a 5th perspective. My instinctive preference is to say a lot of those issues are really about how we manage ourselves as an organization, and they would naturally come into the internal process or the customer perspective of a standard scorecard. So I would, on balance, I'd prefer to see it incorporated within the existing 4. But if it is a major focus, if it's the thing that the chief or the chairman is always banging the table about and saying, you know, ESG is important, we must take it seriously, guys, then I think to have it as a separate perspective can help. I think the strategy map cause and effect structure rather provides the answer there, because if you find that the actual objectives related to ESG are actually logically going in the existing 4 perspectives. You're saying, well, we don't need a 5th. But if you want it for almost for publicity, for image, for awareness, and really want to put it on the radar screen in a big way, then fine. I don't think it dilutes the value by including it. I think the point is, if ESG is important, incorporate it in the scorecard. How you put it in the perspectives, for me, is the second level issue. And I'd be happy to take either route, but my instinctive preference is to incorporate it by the nature of what ESG means.
Perfect.
No, thank you for that question. And please, if anyone doesn't agree with my answer or wants to pursue it more, please come back.
Hi. Sorry to
Hello,
interrupt.
Samir.
Samir, yeah.
Hi. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for this
Yes, Samir.
opportunity, Dr. Allen and Mr. Sheikh. I'm Samir. I'm into strategy management for the last 6-7 years, and I've been following you as well, Mr. Allen. A big fan of your comments as well. Quick question on the what you just mentioned about the balanced scorecard, and you mentioned something important about the basic principles that should be established without diluting that. We can be creative to some extent. So my question would be, what other principles that should be considered? For example, one of the common challenges we faced during the implementation is the perspectives and the weightage of those perspectives. So normally we say the objectives should be all balanced, which means each objective has equal weightage in the whole scorecard. And then there was a new iteration that, okay, perspectives weightage can be higher. For example, finance, we put 60% because that is the ultimate outcome that we are trying to achieve. And the enablers are lesser and lesser. However, in my opinion, that dilutes the whole point of having a balanced scorecard. So I just want to know your perspective on it and your direction on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Very good question. I would say, going back to my very first experience in 1994, we built in weightings and a quite sophisticated weighting system, and we didn't have equal weighting. But what we did do was to make sure that we had a significant weighting, I think a minimum of 20% on each of the 4 perspectives. And then within the perspective, the KPIs, the objectives and then KPIs were given appropriate weightings within what had been allocated to that perspective. So we did not have a perfect mathematical balance. What we had was a priority, a clear set of priorities that we were setting. And I think weighting can change year by year. I recall one case where what we had was a particular weighting for this year, but it was understood that next year we would change, because what we wanted to see was this year focus more on the enablers and developing capabilities. Next year, using those capabilities in the business to demonstrate, to deliver more in the customer and finance perspective. So I think your point is a very good one, because you don't want to be totally imbalanced. So, 60% on one perspective and 5% on another, I think is absolutely not correct. But if you've got, 15, 20, 25, 30, I would be comfortable with that, but I wouldn't want to go too high or too low. But I think weightings are important, but my normal advice is don't do it in year 1 if it's a new application. Learn the basics of the scorecard, introduce it year 2, and be ready to refine those weightings and change them as your priorities change, as they will. So over your 6 years, I'm sure your organization has changed its priorities, and I think the weightings should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great point, Samir. My point of view is, instead of giving weightage to each perspective, because it is very complex to understand perspective weightage. So why don't we give weightage for objective, so that there could be heavy weight objectives in each perspective. So that way you strike a balance. even in the financial perspective, you have like one or two very important objectives. You give a higher weightage. So in the internal processes, you have one or two objectives, so that as a global overall weighted average score of the overall balance scorecard can be truly balanced. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think
Actually, what?
Yeah, can I just say Abdul's point is very important. I mean, there's a sense of keep it simple.
Yes.
And it's got to be, you've always got to be in a situation where the users can understand it. The work we did in the bank in 1994 starting, we did it by perspective first, then by objective, then by KPI within the objective. It was quite complex, but we were all senior bank managers, and we took the line, if senior bank managers can't understand numbers, they shouldn't be in the job in the first place. So, we went for what was quite a complex system. But I think Abdul's point is very important. Keep it simple to start with, and you can always develop a little more detail if you want to. Okay, but thank you, Samir. Okay. So just sorry, Samir. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point. Actually, one of the challenges we faced while giving this objective weightages is a normal tendency for people is to, when you have more weightage, people focus automatically tends to be there. So, for example, if I'm saying my financial objectives have more weightage, I'm naturally going to be inclined towards those financial or the customer oriented objectives rather than focusing on the enablers, which is on the training and employees retention as well as the process optimization. So just to add on to what you guys are saying, this is one of the common things that we face. Human tendency is to focus on the objectives which has more weightage. They will naturally try to move that, influence that more than the other ones. So that's a common challenge we faced during our implementation phase.
Yeah, thank you.
Samir,
Yes,
Samir, if I answer, it's very important that each and every object is very important to know. Okay, so it's not that one objective with a higher weightage is more important. It's not like that. The weightages will tell you the overall progress. Okay, only just to know that overall how the organization is going forward. But individual objectives and measures, they have their own importance. So we should not be disturbed because of the weightage.
Clear. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so just to move on then. So good practice in terms of objectives and mapping. Don't have too many. Typical guidance would be 12 to 18 at the organizational or what we call tier 1 level, perhaps 8 to 14 maximum at a functional or departmental level. So, don't get into having 35, 40, 45 objectives. It's lost focus. Make sure the linkages are clear and obvious. Make sure you include finance. So often in the public sector, people say, well, we're not a profit center, therefore we'll leave finance out. And I say, absolutely not. You must include it. It is part of the results, and you are required to demonstrate that you're using taxpayer money efficiently. So it's got to go in. And use it for communication. It's a great tool. If it's a good strategy map, it's a great tool for communication. Use it. And here's just an example I've picked. I think this has got 15 objectives at corporate level. It's from a real case study, and a nice flow, cause and effect, spread over the 4 perspectives. You'll see one is halfway between the learning and growth and the process perspective, which indicates that it's one of those topics which you can argue both ways around. Sensible way is put it on the midline. Why not do that? Alignment and cascade is one of the most crucial areas. In other words, aligning and cascading down from the organization to departments or divisions and ultimately to teams and individuals. Because clearly the work done to implement a strategy is done by people in teams and departments. It's not done by a few corporate people sitting in the fancy head office. So you've got to align and cascade, link it all together. What I find is this all the time. It's been a very common pattern. When I do the training program on this, and you go through what we would call step 8, the alignment and cascade, everyone's okay. The concepts are quite straightforward. Any questions? No, very clear. As soon as they start to do it in real life, and obviously we put exercises in to do that, what happens is they go right off track. Now, some don't, some do it very well, but a lot of people go right off track. And so they haven't really thought through the logic of the cascade and alignment. And that's the real challenge. So this will take time to do properly, in my experience, and it's very important to do it properly. Kaplan and Norton have a quote which is something like, the difference between high benefit users of a scorecard and low benefit, and we want to get high benefit, for the purpose of this session today, is in organizational alignment. Now, if you translate that from Harvard speak to English, what it means is those organizations that align the organization against a common strategy perform better than those that don't. So it's very important to get that working. The point right at the bottom, when you think about aligning people to the department and then the department to the organization, you need a good relationship, practical business relationship between the HR function that normally manages the HR performance management system and personal objectives and the like, and the strategy management office that's coordinating the strategy top down from a corporate point of view. So good practices is really thinking it through and making sure it is logical. Applying the 3-tier approach, I'll show you on the next slide. We're cascade through objectives, not KPIs. That's an early mistake I made. 1994-95, I made a mistake on this. And then I learned by identifying problems and seeing what they were, you should cascade through the objective, not just through the KPI. We'll look at that in a minute. And make sure that the total is the sum of the parts. In other words, if you've got, say, 10 departments in your organization, that the corporate numbers equal the sum of the 10 departments. Otherwise, those 10 departments will not deliver the corporate goals, will not deliver the corporate vision. So that alignment and validation of targeting is important, often ignored, often ignored. So here's again, a pretty famous slide now. So just showing the idea of the concept. When we get to tier 3, the individual, we're not doing a full scorecard. We're just doing the personal objectives.
So we have a question here, Alan.
Please.
In the previous slide, we talk about horizontal alignment. Okay. Yes. So here it's almost always ignored part in the balanced scorecard implementation. The question is, whose role is this to make sure of the horizontal alignment? Okay, because it's you have a 2 or 3 different business units. How can we make sure that these business units are aligned? Okay, and who should do that job? I know it's a classical CEO have to take care, or Office of Strategy Management have to take care. In reality, in the larger organizations, how can this happen?
I think the best way of doing this is it's all about the policy of how you govern yourself within the organization. So I think the sign off on this is at executive level, chief executive level. The SMO can recommend, and then we'll implement it through a planning and measurement system. So the thing we've got to avoid is where Department X says, well, you can't hold me accountable for my targets because I depend on IT department and I've got no control over IT, and therefore don't blame me if I'm late because I'll be blaming IT. And of course, that is not a productive answer. I think the answer, certainly in bigger companies, is the concept of service level agreements and a mindset and a culture that the relationship between, say, an operating department and a support department is the relationship between a customer and a supplier. And as a customer, you are responsible for managing your supplier. When I fly, which I do many times, a lot, I'm expecting the airline to have managed its supplier, who's the fuel company. I don't want to hear from the captain, well, I'm sorry, you know, we haven't got any fuel today because Exxon or BP or Chevron have let us down or something. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense. I expect the airline to have managed their supplier. And I think it's the same thing within an organization. As an operating department, you manage your support departments. Service level agreement discipline can be useful, but you don't want to make it too bureaucratic in a small organization. But I think more important than the SLA and the bureaucracy, if you like, is this fundamental concept of internal customer and supplier. And I've been through a transition on that myself some years ago, and it's really powerful if you do it properly, but it has to be disciplined and applied rigorously. You can't just half do it and then, oh, well, you know, this other guy knows my nephew's sister and all this nonsense that starts to go on. Or you don't let personalities get in the way and emotive nonsense. It's got to be done in a highly professional business way. But done like that, it removes this problem about I depend on IT and I've got no control. You've got to manage your supply. Thank you. No, good point. So that's just the cascade diagram, and let's keep it moving. I'm conscious of time. Single point ownership and accountability. In other words, what we want to have is for the components of a strategic plan are owned by a named individual, and so the monitoring side is essentially holding those people to deliver whatever the targets or the activities are, the projects. So the challenge, no clear ownership, hiding behind committees, that's what the public sector like to do, multiple owners, ownership attributed to a function but not to an executive. I had a recent case, big public sector entity in the Middle East, and I was called in to do some work with them. And I looked at their previous year performance, and some of it was okay, but some of it was appallingly bad. You looked at, I remember one KPI, they achieved 22% of targets for the full year. This was a strategic KPI. We're not talking about some minor operational thing. Strategic KPI for a big business, many, many thousands of people. 22% achievement, 78% failure, if you like. No one was the slightest bit bothered. No one. Except me. I mean, I gave them a tough time on it, I tell you. But the underlying issue was no ownership. So, you know, I'm not accountable for this. So yes, it's very poor, but you know, it's like an act of God. So that's the way they looked at it, rather than we have a responsibility. So one of the most important developments we brought in was the sense of ownership, starting with objectives and then KPIs and then the supporting projects. So quite common to see this, and multiple owners is bad, because what you get is each one thinks the other one is responsible for that bit. So clear single point through the structure and a clear policy of what ownership and accountability means. You know, you can say to me, Alan, you're now the owner of this strategic objective and the KPI. What does that mean? And I think the organization has to define clearly what they mean by ownership and accountability. I use a simple technique of rules of engagement to do that. So it's documented, signed off by the chief, it becomes a policy. And a supporting technique I found very useful is the RACI model to help to clarify some of these things. And just the famous statement of Harry Truman, the former US president, the buck stops here. Now, I'm accountable. KPIs, we've got the right KPIs, basically. And what do I see? Some people do it beautifully, but we're looking at many who struggle a bit. A vast number of operational KPIs. Focus on activity rather than outcome. We tend to like to use a logic model approach for developing KPIs: input, process, output, outcome. What we are focused on strategically is the business outcome. What I see a lot of in KPIs is measuring activity, the process, or the output, but not the outcome. So we're not measuring strategic progress, we're measuring being busy. So that's a very important point, very common problem. Too many, as I say, is also extremely common and just inappropriate measure. If I just talk through this example quickly, mixing satisfaction and loyalty. I often ask people if we're doing a training program, let's imagine we're running a hotel, and let's imagine one of our objectives is to enhance or increase customer loyalty, which is what all hotels do through their loyalty programs. How can I measure customer loyalty? And some will come up with very sensible solutions, but I'll guarantee one or two will come up with customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is not loyalty. I occasionally fly Singapore Airlines. Am I satisfied with them? I'm extremely satisfied. They're widely regarded as just about the best in the sky. Am I loyal? No. Why not? Because they don't serve my route network. Emirates serves my route network, and I'm equally satisfied with them anyway. But I'm very satisfied with Singapore Airlines, but I'm not loyal. And you can think of that in hundreds of ways. Final point, poor use of drill down. People who think a scorecard is one page, and you say, well, why has customer satisfaction gone down from 75 to 70? And the answer is, I don't know, boss. We need an appropriate level of drill down. That's important. So good practice. The right number of KPIs, include KRIs, key risk indicators. So it's not all performance, it's a balance of performance and risk. Typically, I see a relationship on average of about each objective would have 1.5. I mean, on average. So if I've got, say, 15 objectives in my strategy map, I'm probably expecting somewhere between 20 and a maximum 25 KPIs. Don't get high. Be clear on the definition. Manage the quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative assessments can be, many examples, the most powerful so-called KPI in your scorecard. So don't ignore something just because you can't immediately see how to measure it. I mean, today we've all got our phones and Google. If you don't know how to measure anything, just do a search and the answer's probably there. Excuse me. And finally, remember, just grab some water. Remember that at the end of each KPI is a human being. You may have databases and all these fine things, but ultimately it's a human being. And think about how the human being on the receiving end of the KPI will behave. If you're not careful, the whole thing can go pear-shaped at that point. No. Good thinking, good strategic objective, good KPI, but the definition, the detailed definition's wrong, and therefore it all goes pear-shaped. Did I see a hand up?
We have a question.
Please.
We have a question here, Alan. Now, while defining the KPIs, now it's a trend that everybody want to ask ChatGPT what is its opinion. Okay, now being a software providers, so even our clients also know what is my balance scorecard, what is my strategic objectives, what are my KPIs. Then they don't want to think from themselves. They want to ask a ChatGPT to answer their KPIs. And now we are also talking about artificial intelligence generated KPIs. Okay, for their objectives. Yeah, there could be something interesting in that. So in our opinion, the KPIs needs to be really add value to the objective. It should measure the performance of the objective. What is your advice in this? And this is very critical question for all of our clients.
Yeah, surely. No, I understand. I mean, AI clearly is a coming force, and I'm all for not reinventing wheels. But AI at the moment, as I best understand it, will give you a generic answer. So yes, I can, supposing I'm a telecom, and I can ask the question, what are the KPIs I should have in a telecom business? What I will get is a generic answer, but I don't know any business that has a generic strategy. Strategy has some elements of being unique. You differentiate yourself from the competition or the benchmark or whatever. So by all means, learn from others, but don't just take the lazy option. And I've seen people sell books of KPIs, the 10,000 KPIs available, and it will give you lots of KPIs for each subject you can think of. And the tendency then is people treat it like going to a Chinese restaurant, and they're just sort of picking the menu by numbers. Oh, this is good, yeah. Well, I'll have number 5 and number 19 and a portion of number 43, please. Job done. I'll go home early. The outcome is no thinking alignment to the strategy. So if you want to be lazy, fine. But if you want to do it properly, do it properly. And that requires human brain, not AI at the moment. Use AI to support and get ideas, but the decisions are the human brain, not AI. That's my view. So make sure you're measuring the most relevant aspects. And this very famous statement by Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets managed. If you want to manage your strategy, it makes sense to measure it. One of the fundamentals of the scorecard. KPI targets are realistic. Very often they're not. And I just want to briefly talk through this one. I've seen this from a few organizations, but one recently, they talked about 2% staff turnover, and that was their future target for the next 3 or 4 years, 2% staff churn. And I said to the HR director, that means you want 50-year careers. He said, oh, no, I don't want that. I just want 2% staff churn. And I said, you better go back to school and learn maths, because if you're only going to turn 2% of your staff each year, it'll take you 50 years. 2% staff churn equates to an average 50-year career. Just think through the logic. It took him about 10 minutes to do so. But this is very common. People set targets which are they just haven't thought it through. They haven't engaged common sense. And you know the old saying, common sense is not very common. And believe you me, it shows up in the targeting. So make sure sensible. An underlying problem is a lack of numeracy in so many people. Don't complicate matters with stretch targets, in my humble view. And don't expect to improve performance without having projects to deliver that improved performance. Now, Einstein's famous quote, something like, insanity is you keep on doing the same thing and expect a different result. And many organizations embrace that when they do their planning. So it's think about it. Don't set targets which are just seen as lacking credibility. They're going too far. And if a top executive sets a target which appears to be unrealistic, what's the reaction of the staff who are receiving that target? What was this guy drinking last night? What's he been smoking? That's the rather cynical reaction. And when a senior manager loses credibility because he or she has set a stupid target, it really makes them look stupid in the eyes of their employees. And that is not a good thing to do. People should respect their managers, not think they're crazy. So don't go over the tipping point on credibility, and just make sure the alignment is working. So that's the general thought about targeting. But the biggest message is think it through and think through the implications of the target.
The question
Dangerous concept.
In the previous slide. Okay.
Yeah.
So the fourth point, aligned to the strategic initiatives. Okay, the conceptually, if you have a measure gap, okay, so you want to close this particular gap for the particular measure. So you identify a particular strategic initiative to close this gap. Okay.
Yes.
So this is real. People think that they understand this, but in reality, in our experience, that is something people don't understand this concept very well. Okay, people think that initiatives are something different, and then closing the gap of measures is something different. They try to get aligned on the paper, but in reality, they don't get aligned. So, what do you think? What is the best practice here?
I think, no, that's a very good point, Abdul, and it is very common. It goes back to the fundamentals of the scorecard structure. What's my strategy? How do I measure it? What's the target? What initiatives do I need to achieve the target? It's fundamental in it. And when organizations don't do that, they clearly are not using the scorecard properly, and they haven't understood it. So I think that would be one of the corrections that you would do to ensure that the structure of the strategy management system and the accountabilities, the planning and the execution responsibility is all about understanding the linkages. And I think this is one of the most important. The other thing which is important on initiatives is understanding the benefits and the benefits realization side. So yes, big topic. People often go off course. But I think what they've done is they have not embraced the sequence of thinking inherent in the balanced scorecard: strategy, measure, target, initiative. So yeah, just two little statements there. I do like the one on the right. What if we don't change at all and something magical just happens? This is how, again, a lot of people unfortunately plan. So there we go. We'll move on. Now, this is for me a very big one. Performance reporting historically has always been looking backwards. We compare the results of this quarter with the same quarter last year and with the plan for this quarter. And in itself, that's fine. We need that. We need to understand that. But what we also need to understand as the year progresses, and here we are now, we're into March already, my goodness. Our plan was probably developed in last October. The assumptions were probably clarified last September, October, and we put it together as a strategic plan. The world has changed. Things have happened. And the question is not just what did we achieve in the past, which we do need to know, but what we also need to know is what do we now expect the full year to be? Because we're now in March, we've got 2 years actual performance. The world has changed a little bit in that time, all sorts of reasons. And what do we now expect to achieve? What I generally know as the full year reforecast. I am a passionate believer that should be incorporated in a scorecard system. Very few people do, and it does require mature management to do it. I will accept that point. But what I want is the early warning system. I want the system that says, well, our plan is to achieve 100 points this year, but based on the progress we've made in the first few months and what we now expect in the marketplace, I think we're only going to achieve 90. That is important information for people. So I do want to get regular updates of the near future, typically the full year. It could be a rolling forecast system as well. These are forecasts. We're not changing targets. We're not changing accountability. and the early identification of future problems. The earlier we identify a problem, the better we can address that problem. And what I often do is just ask this question. When you drive your car, some of your attention is looking through the rear view mirror at the guy behind and what's he up to. But most of your attention is looking ahead. When I look at the typical performance report that I've seen historically, 100% of that report is looking through the rear view mirror, the past. And the first thing we know the road is blocked is we've hit it. We've hit the blockage. It's too late. So I want to enhance the scorecard by including forward-looking as well as backward-looking. Chief executives love this, but often the people responsible for managing the system set it up wrong, and you don't get reliable information and so on. So there's a lot of cultural and discipline rigor issues that need to go into this. But if you get it right, it is very, very powerful. Here's an example. It's a real scorecard. It's taken from a UK organization, I have to say many, many years ago deliberately. But the two columns with the yellow arrow are looking at the full year. So just at the top, customer satisfaction. Our plan for the year is 70, but we're only forecasting to achieve 65. That's a serious issue. What is it that is not working? What corrective action can we think through? But otherwise, we only expect to achieve 65. And that is important knowledge to top management, who can then think about reprioritizing, in responding in whatever way is appropriate. So that's what I mean by full year reforecast. So yes, we look back, but we also look ahead. Can I just stop? Are there any questions on that? Because I'm conscious of time here, but just any question on this aspect? Because it is not often used, and it is very powerful if it's used properly, and I do have to emphasize properly.
So, any questions? Let me just check it.
Am I able to raise a question?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Please.
So this is Demi Anderson. I'm based in Sydney, so it's 9:40 p.m. on a Saturday evening here. And Alan, thank you so much for this presentation. It's just so insightful. I work as a enterprise or strategic PMO. So as you can appreciate, coming in at the execution phase. And as you rightly have been speaking to here, a lot of organizations do not even have their strategic objectives or goals clearly defined. They think it's the execution of initiatives qualify as their strategic objectives. And as you're probably well aware, like I have worked in an organization that does use Balanced Scorecard. It is my preferred tool in the absence of organizations having a strategy. I propose that they think about their strategic objectives in terms of defining them through a balanced scorecard. But as you can, you're probably aware, a lot of organizations, particularly in this current dynamic economic climate, throw caution to the wind and believe that the landscape's too dynamic to even think about a strategy, because no sooner have they defined their strategy, they believe it's already out of date, no longer serves them. But in an organization where I've seen this work very effectively, and this is very good, I haven't seen this particular table, which I think is really quite helpful, clearly shows what the metrics are, the owners, and the performance targets. But where I've seen it be applied, there's like a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year plan. And the weighting, gets revised at least every year. But I've also, because there's discussions, like there's the OKRs, which have come out at the moment, and a lot of organizations think that they, an OKR, like using OKRs, objectives and key results, is another tool, but I find that it's not really as comprehensive as a balanced scorecard. And I've seen a paper that proposes using OKRs in conjunction with balanced scorecard. But I guess the question that I'm trying to get to here is, how do you deal with like clients and organizations that really don't have any strategic, clearly defined strategy? Because as a PMO, I see it a lot. They seem to think that execution of various pet projects that are not aligned, that are not strategic, and it's very tactical as opposed to strategic. How do you, when you encounter such a environment, how do you deal with that?
Okay, Demi, thanks. That's good, and you're very dedicated on a Saturday evening. That's remarkable.
Or a sad sack.
Yes, those two ways of looking.
My family's in Melbourne, and I'm sort of at the moment. I've got some peace, and I probably should be thinking about heading to get some shadow and catching up on rest and sleep. But yeah, I saw
I was in
the
goal.
Balanced Scorecard is something that is of interest to me. So I don't know, and if I could endure, stay awake through till the end, but I'm hanging in there so far.
Yeah. No, we're making good progress. Yeah, I was in Gold Coast recently, and I'm due in Sydney and Melbourne, I think, later this year. Anyway, the question I normally ask is how important. It depends on the nature of the organisation, but how important is your brand? And most people today, no, that's very important. And I will say, well, brand is a long-term investment. How important are your developing your future leaders? That's long-term investment. What about your physical assets? So a lot of them, it's long-term thinking. And, you then go through a debate which says, okay, we are where we are. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And you just get them to talk about it. And I find coming out of that is the essence of the goals and the strategy. They wouldn't describe it quite like that. And it'll be more of a sort of general conversation, but you can actually start to pin them into strategy and say, well, what you're actually defining is where you want to get to. We use the term goals, vision. And we're talking about the key things you're going to do to get there, which we'll call strategy. And we'll put a measurement and accountability system by it and make sure you've got the right projects. And you start to get people, if you can get them to recognize that they do have to do long-term thinking and invest in the future, depending on the industry and ownership and all this sort of thing. So, I mean, some you'll never win over, and they will just say, no, our strategy is to be opportunistic in a fast-changing environment, and we're going to respond quicker than anyone else. You say, well, okay, that's your choice.
And in technology innovation, where would you categorize that strategic objective? Because there's technology innovation that is one of the major current goals for a lot of organizations, sort of transforming their business. I mean, technology is a huge disruptor always. So businesses have to sort of think about their operating models to adopt some of the latest technology that's going to help their business continue to be competitive. So where do you, because like, is that in that people pillar?
I think
'Cause
there
I
are
thought
two
that
levels on the technology. One is the strategic, which is, are we committed to being sort of ahead of the game technology? We're a major user. We're going to transform our business. You know, digital transformation is one of the current buzzwords, isn't it?
yes, yes.
But then when you think about what you're actually going to do, this takes me more into the projects. So, you know, I want to speed up customer service. I'm focusing on customer service standards strategically. The enabler is the new technology that enables us to change the process in half the time or whatever it is. So a lot of the technology, I think, falls into the project side, but
Right.
you can have, and there was a debate then as to whether sort of technology capability should go in the bottom perspective or in the process perspective.
Yeah,
If I were,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, just
if I
I
wear
need
my
to
hat from the
interrupt
Balanced
because
Scorecard
time
Institute.
constraint. So we need to mind our time. Another 15 minutes. We have a dedicated question hour at the end of the session. So I will be very happy to allow more detailed discussion. So how many things? I have one question in the strategic alignment. Alan, would you like to take it now or when
No,
appropriate
yes,
time?
please. Let's do that now.
Yeah, Dr. Hussam, I just allow you to.
Yes.
Yeah. Please go ahead. I think you can talk. Yeah.
Hello. Hi. How's everybody? This is Dr. Hassan speaking.
Hello,
Mr.
Doctor.
Allen,
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
for your information. Actually, I would just like to speak about alignment, and there is one step has been overlooked in all strategic execution, and it's because actually the models that people are following, like they think balanced scorecard is just like, you know, like you were showing some slides from the Balanced Scorecard Institute, and the actually the magic step here is just one thing is before you there is one step before between formulating the strategy and executing the strategy, which is transforming the organization. And instead of just jumping in the execution, we just have to stop for a while. Stephen Haynes, they call it the Smart Start plan to implement, and now this step has been approved by the BOK, the Book of Knowledge of the Association of Strategic Planning, the International Association of Strategic Professionals, as a major strategic activity, which is between the formulation of strategy and the execution of strategy. We call it the transform organization, where we build. You see, I can see that there's a focal point, failures, problems, alignment. All these are happening because the operating model of the organization is not changed enough to start or to be able to start the execution. Because every organization needs to change definitely their operating model to suit the new strategy. But they don't do that. They just jump in execution without any look around for what is missing to be able to execute the strategy. They have too much missing capabilities. They have too much missing capacities. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough technology. That's why they start facing a lot of problems, because they try to ride in a new horse without a saddle, you see, or with an old saddle that is not actually matching that horse. So that is actually the point that causes a lot of misalignment here, which is the point of transform organization. We have to prepare organizations for the strategy execution before we jump into the strategy execution. There is a big step that can even take 1 year, can take maybe 16 months, because you have to prepare the organization while you are actually doing your daily work. That is actually my point about alignment, and that is actually the secret behind all the problems that we are seeing in the strategy execution. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I would. if I may, Dr. half agree with you, and I think what the point you make is extremely important. I would go back and say, surely the plan itself needs to build in whatever are the changes. If you need to upskill, if you need to change the performance culture, if you need to create more of a team-based organization or whatever your transformation is, it may be in the products or services or how you deliver things and the technology. Surely that should be built into the plan itself. And I've spent a lot of time in the last 20 years focused on strategy execution.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah. Yeah, but the capacity is part of the plan. You know, your plan is not separate from your necessary resources. That's all part of the planning. And I fully agree with you that if you have a plan which does not build in the necessary changes and capabilities, and you simply jump into execution, yes, it will fail. Fully agree. But I would argue a lot of that issue is poor planning in the first place, or incomplete planning, or not linking plan and resourcing, which is very common, I have to say.
Mr. Allen, that now, even if you look at the models that people are applying, even Balanced Scorecard through, they're using a model, like, for example, 9 Steps to Success of the Balanced Scorecard Institute, or the strategy of the LBL strategies, or whatever. Whomever is using the Balanced Scorecard methodology is developing a model, because this model needs also to conform to the IASP, which is the International Association of Strategic Professionals. So now, this year, actually, most of those people updated their model to have this step inside the model, which is called transform organization, because 90% of the time this is overlooked, and it was not even part of the previous models. If they don't have a proper facilitator or a consultant, they will definitely overlook it.
I think what you're saying, Doctor, I'm just watching time as well, and we've still got a number of topics to cover quickly, but just to try and respond briefly, I'm fully supportive and sympathetic to what you say, but my argument is that the development, there's nothing fundamentally wrong in the model. What we're doing is that the Balanced Scorecard is part of the strategic planning system. Now that should include operational plans, budgets, and so manpower budgets, financial budgets, and the works. My argument on that point, or my suggestion, is that a lot of the problems that we face, and we do face problems, is because the need for transformation has not been built into the forward strategy and the planning and the resourcing. And if it has not been built in, yes, then something is missing. But that's what has happened there, is we've simply not planned completely. And that is very common. Incomplete plans, in particular plans that do not incorporate the changes, the capabilities that are necessary for the sort of transformation that so many businesses are going through. I fully agree on that.
Thank you, Dr. Hussam. Thank you, Alan. I know there are many things it can be discussed. Okay, due to the time constraints, we could spend more time on the end of the session, because we have hardly 34 minutes left. Yes, it's any model, if you do it properly. Okay, so that makes the implementation success. Yes. Sure. The transformation part, you define it explicitly, or you embed in the model itself. That depends on how we define it. Okay, so yeah, so we will debate at the end of the session. Alan, please continue.
Okay, so I'll just go through these quickly. One of the main problems, we've touched on this already, is poor alignment between the projects and the needs of strategy and the performance gaps that we're trying to close. So I won't talk through each individual point. What is often missing, and what should be there, is to understand the project benefits and the KPI performance gap and align the two. And that is often not easy. You know, benefits realization can be a problem, but nonetheless, this is quite a common issue. And the other issue I find are two things. Initiative overload is very common and needs to be avoided. And the other thing is, don't confuse strategy and projects. This is a famous airport in Spain, built at the cost of $1 billion. The project itself was complete, it's built, you've got all the check-in desks and the piers for the aircraft and hangars and all the infrastructure. Problem is no one uses it. So it was a successful project, but a strategic failure. But the actual project of building the airport worked fine. So don't confuse the two. So just to focus on the usage for the last few minutes, people who are too busy at the senior level, we're not talking junior, we're talking senior level. People who lead negatively always see the problems, not the solutions. No point in having a strategy, the world is too volatile. Demi touched on that before. And I think the challenge we need to have is top leaders who genuinely believe in strategy management is what they're in place for. It's in their title. Chief Executive Officer is responsible for executing. What does he execute? The strategy. That's his job. So it's really, in one way or the other, getting the top people to focus on strategy and not just the comfort zone of operations. So proper time allocated and ensuring compensation is linked to strategic results, a big one, but the compensation schemes need to be very carefully designed. A lot of them are not very effective. Not an optional extra. The conduct of the management review meeting, this is actually, I'm going to make this just for time, Abdul, the final point. The rest are in, and they're pretty obvious. They're in the materials, just a few more, things like communication and so on. But this is where it so often goes badly wrong. If you have an ineffective regular management review process, forget the rest, because this is where the tool is used. And if it's not going to be used by them or used properly, then don't worry about the design of the tool or maintaining it, because it's simply not working. So you cancel meetings because they're too busy. It's all talk, no decisions. People come late, there are constant interruptions. People play with the phones. People come unprepared. So good practice is basically the opposite of that. I like to set down the rules, the conduct of the meeting for all attendees, and to have it enforced by the chief executive. So crisp chairing of the meeting is so important. I had a meeting recently with a client, and the chief was saying how important the balanced scorecard was. And he came into the meeting, he came in 15 minutes late. He took 5 phone calls during the meeting and then left very early, about halfway through, to say, well, he was very busy and had something else to do, but this is all good stuff and keep on taking the tablets. His leadership was non-existent. His behavior, as soon as he walked out of the room, you could just feel that the whole room went, oh, is this the best the chief executive can do? So it's leadership, 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 leadership. The most important meeting of the month, and that's how it should be seen, not just yet another meeting and it doesn't really matter. Quick story. I worked with one of the banks in Kuwait some years ago, and the chairman of the bank was the sponsor for the scorecard project. And I remember one of his instructions, if you like, was that once a month, the management team would meet in the boardroom to discuss the Balanced Scorecard progress report, not the normal management meeting. It would be the board meeting. It would be the only regular meeting that management members would use this boardroom for. And he said, I want people to feel it's more important. You know, the men would put on their jackets or straighten their ties or whatever it was. It just, this is more serious, guys. We need to take it more seriously. He was one of the best sponsors I've met, all sorts of things he did, but he really understood the behavioral side of this. Having an effective strategy management office, don't have it buried organizationally too far down the organization, inexperienced people, or it's purely a reactive scorekeeper. It keeps the score regardless of what the score is. And I want to see the proactive performance driver, direct report to the chief executive, does, and if you'd excuse the French, please, does whatever the hell it takes to make sure, A, we have a good plan, and B, we execute that plan. And he or she is the right arm of the chief executive to do that and takes the lead on strategy communication. Very important, but too many times I see strategy management officers, so-called, that are just scorekeepers. People with initiative capability, not just scorekeepers. Having a strategic HR function is, I think, one of the big enablers of the whole system. People who are focused on developing the culture, developing leadership, not just the operational HR stuff that needs to be done, usually a separate function. And it avoids problems like people say, I couldn't think how to measure it, particularly in the organizational capacity, so I kind of left it out. So these people, if you get them, if you have an strategic HR function, are very, very valuable allies in strategy management and in helping the scorecard system work. So what are the real issues? Qualitative KPIs if necessary. Ideally, that function reports to the chief. And as I say, can have a really significant impact. A lot of organizations don't yet embrace this yet, but I think it's good practice. And you know, it's all based on people at the end of the day.
One question, Alan.
Yes,
Nowadays,
please.
you know, many HR, many organizations, they create KPIs for the people performance in a standalone mode. They don't really look into the organizational performance. Okay, so we experienced such organizations in our interactions. So what do you think? Like they consider the people performance is something standalone, and then the balanced scorecard is something another thing. Okay, so how do we make sure that these two gets integrated? Okay, I know conceptually yes, they must be integrated, but there is a problem here. So what is your advice?
Okay, I think the practicality is you group them together, first of all, through the compensation arrangement. And you use what we can call personal scorecards, but you know, the individual KPIs and the performance from them as an important component of the compensation calculation. The second one is through communication, and we emphasize the alignment and the role of the individual to the department and the organization. What you don't do, and I've seen this happen a few times, is an HR director takes an initiative and says, well, we don't have a clearly defined corporate strategy. We know vaguely what it is, but I'm going to take the initiative. Everyone will have a personal scorecard. And I've seen them do that, and that they even want to have a full perspective scorecard for every individual. The poor tea boy is measured on is the tea hot, and you know how many cups he's broken and all this sort of thing. Oh, it's crazy. So it's a case-by-case job, but getting the HR director seat at the top table, understand the linkages and the importance of HR helps, because then he will drive his HR performance management system to support and provide what I know as tier 3 scorecard for the individual linked to the department and so on. So a number of aspects to try and overcome that, but a little bit case by case as to why it's gone wrong in the first place.
Yep. Yeah, please continue.
And alignment to reward and recognition. And all I really want to say on that is be very careful how it is designed. I am, I've been looking at these issues for 30 years. I would say 9 out of 10 so-called incentive systems simply do not incentivize the behavior that we look for. The 10th one still gives you faith that there are people who think it through properly, but so many of them are badly designed and incentivize the wrong behavior. All sorts of things go into it. It's a subject all of its own. We could spend 5 days on this one in developing good practice, but be very careful that it works properly. So that's the message there. I just like this example. My boss pulls up in his new car, and I say to him, "Oh, it's nice." He says, "Well, if you work hard and put the effort in, I'll have an even better one next year." I want you to work hard, so I, the boss, get the bonus. I mean, this is what happens with so many systems. You see it, and then you go in the public sector and say, "Oh no, we don't have a bonus scheme." And you say, "Would it help if you did?" "Well, yes, but we're public sector, we can't have one." I say, nonsense. Just get off your backside and manage it. That's what managers are meant to do. So, come up with the appropriate HR policies to attract and retain good people in the public sector. And this is the final message. And again, I'm not going to go through detail for time. Communicate, communicate, and communicate. Every single time I do an assessment of internal communication in terms of strategy management, every single time, without exception, there are big gaps between what organizations say they would like to do and what they're actually doing. The ownership of strategy communication, I believe, should be with the Strategy Management Office. So I think that's a role they need to take and really take very seriously indeed. It's so important. The two overall things, just to summarize, number one is leadership and number two is communication. I think those are so important. I'm going to stop here, Abdul, and if there are any more questions anyone's got.
Yeah,
could I just say, I'm very happy to stay beyond any allocated time and handle more questions if anyone wants to stay.
I send a message to all that there will be an extended session of 15 minutes in case if you would like to speak and discuss. Okay, so thank you, Alan. So let's catch up for questions. Let me briefly do my part quickly. Yep. So can I share my screen? Yep. Can you stop screen share? Yep. So let me share my screen. I just share my full window. If you are able to see, just please can you confirm? Can anyone confirm?
Yes, it is visible. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, thank you, Alan. You covered the majority of the points. It's very interesting insights. Let us talk about a different point of view. So we talk about the strategy execution, which is a complicated concept with more steps in it. Okay, so doing it manually, it's really a complicated job. Being a strategy manager myself, I faced a lot of difficulty in the way back in 2008 to 2010. Okay, so this motivated us to make a comprehensive strategy execution system, which is a true strategy. Okay, so I'll just quickly talk about a few things here which might help you to understand. So doing it a balanced scorecard project by manual sense it has its own challenges. First of all, collecting and consolidating data for strategic objectives, measures, and initiatives, people performance is really complicated job. So it's a really difficult and time-consuming job. You need to have a dedicated people to do this job in Office of Strategy Management. The second point is balanced scorecard presentations. Okay, so if you want to prepare a CEO meeting or a departmental presentations or a board meeting, so this is one of the key pain point for Office of Strategy Management. Samir, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So preparing the balanced scorecard presentations is a complicated job, and it takes time, and it's really difficult. You need some senior people to spend a lot of time. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think the screen that is visible is the WebEx screen. You might have selected just the WebEx screen while sharing. Just select the entire screen so that your navigation will also be captured. Yeah.
I'll do that. Deep, thank you for notifying me. Okay, share my screen. I'll share it. Now can you see it?
Yeah. Now the PPT is visible. Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm just talking about, sorry, I missed it. So we talk about the collecting and consolidating the data. So balanced scorecard presentation is a complicated job. Communications. So fixing up strategy meetings and doing the follow-ups is something which is very complicated. It takes time. Okay. Then the fourth point is traceability. So the data is scattered in such a way with the various versions. Getting a final presentation or a final discussion concept is something which is almost always a complex job. Okay. And the preparation process for the Excels and PPTs and the communicating, making the notes. If somebody is new member is joining, it's always a knowledge transfer to the new member is a challenging job. I'll talk about budgeting process. Budgeting process is a very important business process in the organization. This needs to be collaborated by finance and also by Office of Strategy Management. This process is a more collaboration kind of process, and this is almost always manual process. That's what the organizations do. Now, calculating the overall organizational performance based on your measures, objectives, and then consolidating them to a single number is also a time-consuming job. So you need to do a lot of manual calculations or complicated Excel files. Okay. So alignment is again a complicated job, as even from the doing it from the systems point of view. Like for example, you have a balanced scorecard, so business processes. Now the business process management is almost always like another silo. So they do it in a different way. What is more important, likewise. So consolidating them into one umbrella is something which is very critical. So you bring business process, the people performance, and then systems integration, everything together in the process of alignment. So that's, if it is done manually, it's a really complicated job. That's the point here. And now this organizational transformation assessments like ESG, environmental, social, and governance, like organizational health index, strategy focused organization. These are all assessment types. I know we are more familiar with SFO. So this cannot be separate than the strategy execution. It should be in alignment with the strategy execution. So you need to have a unified mechanism to do these assessments without a problem. Okay, that's one of the key challenge if you don't have a system to run your strategy execution. Best practices templates. Now that all depends. So each consultant bring his own experience. Then maybe they modify the standard process. They get confused with the people, and then there is a problem that it will mess up from the sustainability of implementation. So all these things can be consolidated to a single. We have tried to bring everything together into one system. Of course, there is a lot to learn to go forward. So we bring everything to a one platform, which talks about strategy planning part, like strategy analysis part, and then value gap, scenario planning, the translation of the strategy. Even we include OKRs in case if one business units don't want to follow a balanced scorecard methodology, in case, even though we don't recommend that, but still OKRs can be used. Alignment, and then business processes, do the budget, the performance reporting, the data integrations, the business process excellence initiative is a part of the overall strategy transformation. Consolidated reporting, all the business unit wise performance reporting, the balance scorecard reporting, everything will be consolidated and it will be through the system. So you can conduct strategy reviews and you can take up the actions. So also you can do operational reviews and take up actions, board reviews, and then you have the overall organizational performance calculations. Okay, so you can do assessments in the system, whether it could be ESG, OHI, or SFO assessments, or you can have a weighted average of all performance numbers to organizational level, consolidated level, with the weighted averages of perspectives, objectives, and measures, that you get it all. Then you have a strategy refresh and emerging strategies. Now all these things can be done through through strategy. That's what we talk about. Let me take you to one. I'll just share once again to another window. Okay. So maybe I'll just share an entire window. So if you are able to see it. So can you somebody say that you are able to see my
it is visible. Yeah.
Okay, now I'll take only 5 minutes in this. The FRU strategy is a comprehensive strategy execution system, which has all, like do strategy analysis, do balance scorecard, initiatives, reviews, PMO operations, the people performance, risk and compliance. Okay, just all, you name it, like organizational performance. I'll just quickly touch, because I cannot show all. This is not the product demonstration, but I'll just take you to one of the my favorite topic, which is the strategy map. From the strategy map, if you are able to cascade to everything what you want to see in the particular business unit, that will be something great. Okay, so if you see here a strategy map, from
Sorry,
here,
so it is stuck on the home page of the solution.
Okay, sorry guys. So let me share it again. Window. So if I believe you are able to see.
Now I can see the map. Yes.
Okay, so now if you see the map, this is like a strategy map for the individual organization. If you want to know more about a particular strategic objective, click on it. You can see the whole performance, whether it could be an objective performance, a measure performance, or initiative performance connected. Then you can see the risk and compliances, the people performance, individuals and teams. So if you want to know more, just double click on it, and then another tab will open. Just Deep, let me know if another tab can be seen.
It is visible. Yes.
Likewise, you can just cascade to any level without noting down anything, and also you can just communicate from here in the system directly. So you solve the communication problem, which Alan was telling, that you need to communicate. You can directly communicate. Just check your email, and then you can just say, based on the master data, so you can send them. Then all the messages will be tracked here, so you can see the progress of individual communication. So likewise, so you can have the complete organizational performance defined, like ESG, SFO, and OHI assessments. You can do that. You can know the complete performance modules of balance scorecard and initiatives progress. I'll just open. So you have a complete mechanism to check your ESG performance metrics, how to do that, and right from the beginning. And then you have like a complete people performance suite, like you do for individual performance, a team performance, 360-degree review. You have a weighted average of these three to people performance. Then we recently added these two functionalities, like 9-box model. 9-box model talks about the current performance and then the potential of the individual employees. Then you map it. So you cannot only decide the employee value only based on the current performance. You need to see what is his potential. So this 9-box model do that. Competency management. So it talks about the tracking and tracing of the complete competencies, and then how you close that. So now everything is linked to the strategy. That's the beauty of it. Okay, so you are not doing it in a separate system or a separate process. You are doing as part of complete strategy execution. Okay, likewise, you can do the budgeting part, like capital expenditures, the operational expenditures, as a part of the strategy execution. You do it, and then in case if you are doing any business process excellence initiatives, you can do that. So you define all business processes, link them to the strategic objectives. For example, I'll just open it. Okay. So if you have all your business processes, you can define them. You have you define a KPI for each process. Okay, so you have methodologies. So you define all the methodologies which your organization is most familiar. It could be a Six Sigma, it could be your lean process, or it could be Kaizen or total Toyota production system, whatever you choose it. Then it is interconnected with the strategy execution. That means the business process excellence is not far away. It's not completely a standalone initiative. So you have a initiative combined to the balanced scorecard. Okay, so you have, for example, you have initiatives. So you can look at the initiative performance, which is very, very critical. And then if the group of initiatives can be combined into a PMO. So from PMO, you can define portfolios and programs. You can see them. All these things are connected to, I'll just stop sharing and then I have to come back to another screen share if you allow me. Okay. So I'll just share once again. I'm not sure if we are able to see my PPT.
No.
No.
The WebEx is visible. WebEx screen. Just share the entire screen on the left.
I am trying it, Deep. So let me share once again. Okay. So I'll just share. Yeah, I have it here. The moment I open. So, so the system has developed based on the strategy execution premium approach, and then built connected with all defined methodologies. And then the new release is, so we have completely integrated to the Power BI for the dashboarding. Okay, so now the moment you do all the system, you plug in, the data will be transferred to the dashboards. You don't have to prepare a single thing for the board meetings or presentations for your team members. So it's automatically done. So now the time for Office of Strategy Management is more onto defining what is needed, how to measure it, how to align it, how to communicate. That's how. Okay, so if you talk about the measures, you can just list out all the measures, whatever your choice, like a balanced scorecard overall performance. You talk about initiatives, so you can see what is the overall cost performance, blah blah blah. Then you can see the overall project performance also, the people performance, the individuals, team, and 360-degree review. It's again assessment. Then you can have a the strategic analysis like SWOT, PESTEL, or Porters. Then you have like a assessment, SFO assessment. You can see the assessment, and then you can have all the things, the breakup of the assessments, complete traceability of of the strategy management is there as part of the strategy execution system. I think that's a quick briefing from my side. If you have any questions or something, we will be very happy to give a demonstration. If you want to try, please feel free, and then we will be happy to help you to test it. Okay, and then we have a very serious plan of including the strategy formulation part, so that you don't have to go for any other system. One system to help you to achieve your strategic excellence. Yeah, so I think that's my questions. I think that's my part of the demo. We have questions to take up, Alan. So are you ready now to take up some questions?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let me take up some questions. Yeah, here the question is about the change management. Okay, so how do we really manage change, especially when you have a cultures where you have the people working with from the different countries. Okay, so that is one question we have raised. Maybe you can take up 2-3 questions together and answer. So that is one question. How do you manage the change for this? And then you have one more question, that how do you mobilize the management leadership team as a part of the implementation? Because if you don't mobilize them properly, or if you don't, if the management is not active in the beginning, then all whatever you do it tend to fail. Okay, so how do you mobilize the leadership team, and then how do you manage change? This is one question. Yeah.
Okay, let me try and answer those. They're big questions, and obviously there's always a sort of case by case, organization by organization, specific features. So I'm giving you very general answers inevitably. Change management. What are we talking about? We're talking about strategy. Inherent in strategy is change. No one today has a strategy that in 5 years' time we're going to be exactly the same as we are today. It wouldn't make sense. So change is inherent in what we're doing. So a number of things. Communication clearly is paramount. And I think one aspect of communication has got to be the what's in it for me. What is the benefit of change? Rather than simply, we at the top have decided to make a change. This is it. Your job is to implement it. Go ahead and do it, and we'll hold you accountable. That tends to get all the negative reactions. Rumors of change and uncertainty, all of the negative reactions. People resist change. So change has got to be sold. Just like you're selling a product, you're selling soap powder, as it were, traditionally, you're selling whatever. Senior management have got to sell the proposition. What is the benefit? Recent company, I recall, the chief, when he was talking about the new strategy, using the strategy map to communicate, but was talking about the inherent change and said, if we can execute this new strategy, there's a lot of benefit. One, the company will be bigger. That means more career prospects within the company, more potential promotion for you within the company. Number two, we have a profit sharing scheme. Guess what? If we make more profit, which this strategy is aimed at, you will get more in your pocket. Number three, we'll need more people. And this particular company had a policy of, where possible, recruiting from existing family connections, provided the new individual had the right, basic experience or competencies or what have you. So they would take family connections ahead of someone they had no connection with at all. So what's the benefit for you? Potentially more promotion prospects, more profit sharing, more chance of recruiting your younger brother or nephew or sister or whatever. And he repeated that message that, there is no loss in this. If we can make this work, you, to all the staff, will benefit. And then this is what the change is. This is why we're changing it and so on. So communication from leadership, and it's got to be from the leader. If the leader's too busy, forget it. So I think that has to be done. Now, mobilize, if I get the question properly, it's really saying, how do we mobilize the management, particularly the senior management, I guess. Well, they either believe in strategy management or they don't. If they don't waste your time. I mean, very simple. And I've said that to people, many people over the years. Just don't waste your time, because you're trying to push something uphill and it's difficult to do. So the first thing is, how do you engage senior management in believing that better strategy management is the thing that they need to do to keep their jobs, in many cases, make sure the company survives and prospers. And I used to say to people in Dubai, because I did a lot of training work in Dubai and consulting work. Come along to the next Kaplan and Norton masterclass, because they would visit once or twice a year and give this public masterclass. I said, if Bob Kaplan can't convince you, forget it. So you've got to find ways of engaging them. It's probably best done by outsiders who bring an outside perspective. And, do you realize, what's happening in the industry? This is the trend, whatever. this is good practice somewhere else. If you're simply trying to persuade your boss, hierarchies and politics and personalities tend to get in the way. So it may be an external agency to do it. But underlying the question, very important, you have to have the engagement of management, especially senior management. If you don't waste your time.
Perfect. Yeah. So any more questions? I think you can unmute your mics and ask question, because it's an extended now 10 minutes. If anybody wants to quickly discuss their issues, or please feel free. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry I came late. I joined late. I'm very, very sorry about that. I've been trying to get myself accustomed to this technology. I didn't know that I have to download the app and then join. So I've been trying to join, but now that I'm here, I'm sorry about that for joining late. Well, my question will be, you talk about, you explained that question, even though it's not, the question is not coming from me directly, but I really enjoyed the insights you gave on that question. What I would just love to ask is, because at the beginning of trying to answer the question, you talk about different companies with different approach. Now, if you to manage a digital platform, probably let me know an insurance platform, and it's not like what one used to. It's not something that you are used to before, because I have a strong background in commodity business. You know, you see what you want to sell, you know the quantity you want to sell, you can measure them in tons and all that. But this one is digital, it's a digital platform, and your interaction with the boss or with the management is limited. So how will you manage in such condition if you have a kind of challenge, in a way that you'll be able to get their attention and you will not be seen as pestering them or something?
Alan, did you? Yeah. So there is a different type of industry. There is a different type of scenario. Okay. So in commodity trading kind of organizations, how do we convince the management? If I understand Dr. Joshua, so how do we convince the management that such an initiatives are useful for the organization? If I understand correctly. So what do you advise, Alan?
Okay, if I got the question as well, it's when you have very limited access to top management.
Yes.
Now, again, I need to say every one of these issues is specific to a particular organization and the personalities and the politics involved. Okay, so that needs to be accepted. In general, you have to find ways and means of getting that connection, that contact, that conversation. And I don't think just pushing papers up, you know, producing a nice paper and recommendation and sending us up the chain tends to do very much. You've actually got to see people face to face, in my experience. And however you do that, you have then to be able to sell quickly. I mean, we're selling a proposition, which is, we believe better strategy management using a balanced scorecard type system would help the organization to perform better. That's the basic proposition. So first question I ask is, what is the problem keeping the chief executive awake at night at the moment? What is the problem? Is it competition? Is it cash flow? Is it, yeah, whatever it may be? Again, very specific case by case. But you need to try to align a strategy management system to be the solution to a problem, and a problem that is high in the visibility of the top executives. That's what you need to do, I think. That's the general comment I'd make. I mean, otherwise you need to know specifics, but that's general.
Yeah, very nice. Dr. Joshua, what I understand is you just try to find out critical problems of the organization, maybe one or two, okay, top problems. And then you raise them to the management that, guys, if you want to solve those problems, this is the way. They will hear you, no matter how tough the CEO or CFO, whoever is, because you are tackling their problems. Now then you try to get prepared. You prepare very well so that you make a point, because you will not get opportunity again and again. Okay, so you just prepare for that and answer it. Even if you are wrong, I think that they will take it up in a positive way, because it is you're talking about their problem. Maybe it will open the door for them to think. Okay, that's how we do always. That's what we used to do in the beginning of our careers. So we go and boldly tell that this is your problem and this is solution, and it works. It works even if they don't like you raising the flag, but they at least appreciate you that you are the one who can give honest feedback. Okay, that will work. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Joshua. Thank you very much. Yeah, I hope you got the answer. We can talk later if you have more questions. There is one comment from Mr. Essam Ahmad. Yes, Mr. Essam, you would like to talk about it? Yeah, please go ahead. If you can unmute and speak. Mr. Essam, are you able to hear me? So, Essam Ahmad, so he is in public place. He has one recommendation to let the strategy execution succeed in his organization. He's in the public. So if you can text something, we can discuss about it. So meanwhile, we can take up other questions. But if you send a message, then we will just notify the team. Yeah.
Could I just add in, Abdullah, if I may? If you're already successful, what is the advantage of putting in a new balanced scorecard strategy management system? I think that would be my slight concern. What you're doing is to align your new proposal to a recognized problem. Maybe just an underperforming business, maybe a particular issue you've got. I've had a number of balanced scorecard programs, which when you talk through to the chief, the issue that concerns him is project overload, initiative overload, and how to manage those initiatives, and understanding that some are more aligned to strategy than others. Therefore, using the discipline and structure of a scorecard system done properly to drive prioritization and selection of the smaller number of key projects that do need to go ahead, and putting the others in the nice to do box. So you need to understand what it is that is there, which is one of the points I made earlier on. Align the scorecard to a specific business issue, not just generally do it because the textbook says it's better alignment and better strategy performance and the like. Those are textbook answers. You want the specific issue you're trying to address.
Yeah. One question, Alan, is when you do the balanced scorecard implementations, usually you need to have patience. Okay, sometimes you may not get what you are expecting in the first 1 or 2 or 3 months. Okay, so there will be some kind of people who don't want this project to be successful, but they don't tell. Okay, so what is the role of the business head in that scenario? How can he motivate the team to continue until you make the progress? Yeah.
Okay, I think there's a lot to be said for early wins. And even when you're designing a scorecard, one of the things I often like to do is, as I'm presenting a proposed set of KPIs to senior management team, I just make a point. This KPI is already measured and monitored. So frankly, it's not telling you anything new. This one is entirely new. This one, you kind of see odd bits of data, but you haven't seen it brought together at corporate level before. And you will quickly find, if you do the scorecard properly, at least half of the KPIs are entirely new. Because you, for the first time, you've thought for strategic KPIs. Can I share a quick example? This was a motor company. And the chief executive I met at a conference, and he said, look, we've got all of the KPIs we could possibly need, but can you come and help sort out which are the strategic ones that I and the board of directors should focus on, and which are the more operational ones? I really need an outside view to do that. Fine. We went in, and so it was at a scorecard conference, and he was on board on the idea of a scorecard, so we developed the scorecard. Half of the KPIs were new, and it shook him, because he said, I thought I understood my industry, but what you just demonstrated is I was flying blind. Half of these KPIs are new. They're all very relevant. They give me new insight into the business. Thank you very much, type of stuff. But that's what shocked him. So it's finding what the chief wants and then making sure you get the early wins. So even in the design phase, if you're saying this will give you new insights into the business, most senior people are naturally positive. Yeah, that's good. And so you've got to sell it. And the problem is, internally, we're not very good at selling. Quite often, historically, in the early days of a scorecard, it was run from finance departments because it was the modern version of management accounting. Now, I'm not an accountant, but I spent a lot of my life in finance departments. Finance people, God bless them, are on average useless at communicating. All they can do is tell you the technicalities and so on, but they're useless at selling a proposition. They think they're there to control you, you know. That's it, it's control and budget and authorization. They feel themselves as control agents. So they're useless at communicating. And if you're going to make it work, you have to communicate and get people on board. What's in it for me? I think we need to keep that one in mind.
Fantastic. Just I add one more point is if you are going to launch a balanced scorecard initiative or a strategy execution initiative, in my experience, you identify some key people who really willing to change and support kind of thing. You don't just pull the people who are more popular. You just try to bring some good team who can really lead the change and learn faster kind of thing. And then you invest on them in the early learning phase so that they become your the key enablers for the team. Okay, so if you put a tough people in the first level, then they might have some kind of objections, and then they will not they will go against the change. Okay, so what do you think, Alan? What is the best way to just pre-launch Balanced Scorecard? How to select the right people for the program? Okay,
I think it's getting the right team together under the right leadership. And if you're going to relaunch it, as it were, again, there needs to be a good reason why. Why are you doing this? It's not just a good thing to do. There needs to be a business purpose. And you've got to align it back to that. But yes, the right team is important. Different experiences coming from different parts of the business, so different functional experiences and so on. But you want can-do people. You want people who will understand a problem and look for a solution. And we all know there are a lot of people who will just see a problem and that's it. That's all they want to do is talk about the problem. They couldn't manage their way out of a paper bag, as the saying goes. All they see is problems. They have no solutions at all. So you want to get the right people in. There is a difference in the team between those who simply refuse as a point of principle to accept change. They're just adamant about it. And those who resist change because they see a problem that perhaps you in your enthusiasm to change don't see. So those are very valuable people. If you can capture them, get them in, and really understand perhaps the concerns they have, bring them on board, make them part of the team, provided you can address their concerns and so on. So again, very much case by case, but I think the principle would be a good mix team but leadership. The leader to relaunch has to be a very positive person who can sell the proposition, and or get people who can help. Get the marketing department to help, or the communication department, or whoever, to help support what you're trying to do. Don't do it all yourself. But we want to create this positive benefit message.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I think we run out of time. Any final questions? If in the audience, if anybody is there, they can unmute. You can unmute and ask anything you would prefer to ask, or with another couple of minutes, we would like to say a vote of thanks. Yeah. Any questions from the
Can I
audience?
just say, Abdul, as well, if there are any follow-on questions, by all means, contact me on, I think you've got my contact details on the front page of the slides, or you'll find me on LinkedIn. There aren't many people with my name, so it's fairly easy.
Perfect. So any questions, write to us. You can write to Data Labs team, or we can write to Alan directly. We will coordinate. If you have if you need any one-to-one discussion, please feel free, because it's a platform to discuss issues and problems. We support you all the way. So if you don't have any more questions, I would like to say thank you, Alan, for interesting points. Very, your experience always motivates. Listening to you is very important milestone for us. Okay, so thank you very much. And on behalf of Data Labs team, Fruit Strategy team, thank you all for listening to us, attending it. So we will be releasing the video online. You can look at it, and then those who attend, we will share the presentation with the contact details. You may contact. So thank you for the organizers. Thank you for doing all the stuff to make this program success. So thank you very much, Alan, and everybody. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.